Black Hollow Forest didn't have a proper trailhead. It had a rusted sign, partly overtaken by moss and vines, half buried in the undergrowth beside an old dirt road. If you weren't looking for it, you'd miss it. And even if you were, the place had a way of turning people around. Locals said the trees shifted, the air thickened, and the forest itself resisted anyone who didn't belong. Most stayed away out of instinct. The few who ventured in, hikers, photographers, the curious, usually didn't stay long. Some didn't come back. Eli Morrison hadn't meant to find Black Hollow. He was traveling solo across the Pacific Northwest in a beat-up van, documenting off-grid trails and forgotten wildlands for his YouTube channel. He'd made a name for himself exploring places others wouldn't abandon: mining towns, ghost roads, fire-scarred valleys. He liked silence, solitude, and the dark corners of the world. So when he pulled off the main road in search of a place to camp and found that crooked, rusted sign pointing into the woods, it felt like fate. It didn't matter that there was no information about the trail. No reviews, no GPS tag. In fact, that made it better. He stepped out of the van and listened. No cars, no wind, no birds. Just the stillness of the forest pressing in around him like a thick blanket. It was late afternoon when he strapped on his pack and stepped into the trees. The path was barely visible, just a shallow depression in the earth, choked with roots and old leaves. It wound uphill at first, then narrowed, threading between massive cedar trunks and tangled brush. The deeper he went, the stranger things felt. There was no sound, not even distant animal calls. His boots barely made a noise on the forest floor. The trees grew taller, older, their bark dark and wet like stone. Moss dripped from their limbs in long gray tendrils. And as the light faded, the shadows seemed to hold their shape just a little too long. After a couple of miles, he found a wide clearing flat and ringed with stones, like a fire pit that hadn't seen flame in decades. It was just big enough for a tent. He dropped his pack, checked his bearings with a compass, and set up camp. He filmed a quick vlog update, just a minute or two of commentary, but the camera battery drained faster than usual. He assumed it was the cold or a glitch, but a sliver of unease crept in when he tried to play back the footage. The video was corrupted, the screen jittering with static. As night fell, fog began to crawl across the ground, curling through the trees like smoke. Eli sat by his small fire, eating dehydrated stew and scribbling notes in his journal. The air had grown unnaturally still. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. He turned more than once, expecting to see a deer or owl in the brush, but nothing stirred. At midnight, he zipped himself into his tent. His flashlight flickered briefly before stabilizing. He lay there in the dark, listening. Then came the soundlight at first, almost like wind, but rhythmic. Footsteps, soft, slow, circling the tent. He held his breath. They moved carefully, deliberately, crunching dead leaves in slow arcs. He reached for the hunting knife he kept tucked in his sleeping bag, then he heard breathing, not his own. Heavy, low, just beyond the tent wall, and something brushing the fabric like fingertips tracing the curve of the nylon. He burst out of the tent with his flashlight, scanning the clearing. Nothing. But across the clearing, just beyond the reach of the beam, stood a figure. Pale skin, long black hair, a white dress torn at the hem. Motionless, he blinked. She was gone. The next morning, the firewood was gone, not scattered gone. As if someone had picked every piece clean off the ground. His footprints were still there from the night before, but no others. Still, he packed and moved deeper. He told himself it was a vivid dream, sleep paralysis, but the woods felt changed. Every direction looked the same. Even his compass spun in slow circles, refusing to settle. He followed what felt like the trail for hours. The terrain dipped into a shallow basin where the trees grew impossibly close. The light dimmed unnaturally. At the center, He found a structure, wooden beams in the shape of a collapsed cabin or trapper's hut, half buried in vines. Inside was a stone hearth and a single wooden chair, upright, clean, untouched by decay. A noose hung from the low rafters above it, old rope but freshly tied. He didn't stay long. Eli kept moving, hoping to loop back toward the road. But the forest refused. He recognized a tree he'd passed hours earlier, identifiable by a long clawed scar in the bark. Then he found a small cairn made of stacked stones. He passed it twice more. The trail was circling. The woods wouldn't let him go. That night, as darkness swallowed the forest, the figure returned. She stood at the edge of his firelight, closer now. Her dress looked soaked, as though she'd walked out of a river. Her mouth hung slightly open, her eyes hollow and unfocused. He shouted, demanded answers, but she didn't move. Then she turned and walked backward into the trees, not turning her head, just sliding into the dark like a film playing in reverse. Eli didn't sleep. At dawn, he packed everything and walked in a straight line. No trail, no map, just instinct. The woods fought him, every step thorns, cliffs, sudden drop-offs. But eventually, the trees thinned. He found an old road cracked, buried beneath moss, and followed it. It led to a cabin, not the one from before. A real cabin, standing, intact. He approached it slowly. The door was ajar. Inside, dust hung in the air like smoke. Faded pictures lined the mantel, black and white photos of a family, a woman in a long white dress. Her face looked like the one he'd seen. He found a diary in the back room. It belonged to a woman named Clara Bell, dated 1893. Her final entry was short. The man did not return from the ridge. I buried the child in the grove. Now I am alone, and I will not stay. The trees are hungry. He left the cabin and kept walking. Eventually, he found a ranger station abandoned, half collapsed, but still shelter. There, he waited until a rescue team found him 3 days later. They said he had been missing for 2 weeks. He didn't speak about what he saw. He told people he got lost, that the woods disoriented him, but he never hiked again. Years later, a friend found his journal buried in storage. It was mostly torn, pages ripped out, but one line stood alone on the final page. She's still in the trees, and she remembers me. If these stories gave you chills, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people find this video and maybe even share their own experiences in the comments. Have a story you think we should tell? Drop it below. I read every one. And if you enjoy getting scared, subscribe and turn on notifications. I post new horror every week, just like this. Until next time, sleep tight.